Welcome to Art Walkthrough, where I guide you through my thought process to make you better at the game of art. All right, we are in DaVinci Resolve Fusion. Now, apologies, because this thing is gonna chug. It is quite the beast of a project, as you can see. But don't be overwhelmed, because the cool thing about DaVinci Resolve Fusion is it really is a piece by piece, Lego by Lego, brick by brick type of workflow, which is why I really like it, because I can chunk down things into sizable, manageable parts and then dynamically move those parts around if I need to. So the first thing we want to do is import the background. So we're going to build layers. It reads from left to right. Every single time you see a merge node, this is a layer on top of a layer, on top of a layer, on top of a layer. So it reads from left to right. Everything on the left is at the bottom. Everything on the right is at the very top. Think about this as like a single group. And this group is just being inserted on top of everything else. So don't be overwhelmed by all the nodes, okay? We'll go one by one. So the first is the sky and background, right? So I just bring this in, sky, clouds, bring them in. Next, I animate the clouds. So you can see here, the clouds sort of gently animate out. This is something called STX strange loop. And what it does, it sort of just distorts areas of a picture and then loops them together very slowly. And I thought it needed a little bit of movement. Next, the rocks. Next, we defocus this. So we add this glow back in, like from the painting. This is all the painting nodes over here. See part 1 if you're confused about what I'm talking about. But this adds that defocus back in. Next, we add in the crystals. And here, I added in some glows. So they're very subtle, but you can see throughout, they sort of vibrate and glow in and out. And so this all happens dynamically. They're just sort of shaking a glow function here. So you can see here, they just kind of glow and glow and glow. Cool. Very subtle movement, but it adds a little bit of life. Then I added some smoke. So this smoke is actually very intense. I don't know why I made it this intense, but it's effectively a particle emitter that I then blurred out and then bitmapped and crunched down. So that way it looks like smoke. So it actually gives a very nice effect. And then I just merge this back on top. It's very subtle, but you can see it moving in the final pretty clearly. Then we lens blur all that, so we blur that out. I gave the enemy's weapons a little bit of distortion, actually quite a lot. It moves quite a bit, but this is all this is. So just distortion on the enemy's weapons. I don't really know what these are supposed to look like, so I was kind of just messing around with an effect. I don't know if this is gonna be final or not. Then I blurred them, and then I added it all together. So this is where we're at currently. We have that animation loop from the enemies, and then their weapons have that little displacement effect applied. We have the smoke, we have the clouds moving, so we already have a good look for everything. Then what I did is I separated each individual rock that I painted in the foreground, or at least a couple of them, only 3 of them. Then I emitted them, right? Merged them all together, threw them in a picture. I threw that picture on a cylinder, but basically this is thrown on a cylinder. I don't know why it's not showing me the cylinder. That's weird. There we go. Okay, here's what the cylinder looks like. And then I just threw this flat render, right? All these particles kind of moving dynamically. Threw it on a cylinder because I wanted more of a 3D effect. Applied a camera to it, renderer. So then we get these particles in the foreground. Then I did another one, but this time it's the back half of the cylinder. And this is for the back particles. So they're a little bit smaller. There's some blur on them, lens blur. Then I merged them together with colors from the background to lighten them up a bit and added them into the background. So now we have these moving particles back here. Next, we have more particles, which is this small dust and smoke effect. Once again, I animated some noise, 2 noise things. So one cuts out the other and they kind of create interesting shapes, color graded them, added it onto a cylinder, added the camera there, rendered it out, added a directional blur, and then color curved it and, dented it. So that way it's kind of even more warped towards the ends, and added that back in. Well, that was the front portion. Here's the back portion. The back portion goes behind everything and it's added right here. Next, we have Machi. So in Machi, we have the scarf. So we have this scarf here. Look at that. Wow, it looks so nice now. Look at that. So this was the 3D scarf from Blender. Color corrected it a little bit to match the painting a bit more. Transformed it, moved it around, blurred it just a bit up here in the corner. So everything in the white gets blurred out. Lens blurred it again all together and added it back in. And the only thing I used for Machi was a tracker. So if you notice here, I painted on his hand this tracking thing. So that way I could track the movement of his hand and connect it to the lens flare. I also tracked some things on his arm, so that way you get different movements. You'll see all that later. So here we go. All together right now. Here's where we're at. We're going to sharpen Machi again. So just like I did to the painting, I'm going to sharpen certain areas of this. So this is a hard light layer, and all this is going to go underneath all the effects I'm about to apply. And it's just a blue color on hard light. We add that. Then we add the front portion of this dust effect right here. So you can see the dust is moving around. Okay, then over here we have this group of all the effects. And all I did is I took the layers from the painting and I imported them here and started merging them together in various ways. So you can see all the layers of the painting. And if you want access to this Clipsio paint file / PSD file, it's available on Patreon. So here's this, right? Applied, applying these effects, this mini swirl, all these different effects. I'm applying them all together. I'm adding a distortion to them so that way they move around. Add a slight dent so that way it looks like the particles are getting pulled in towards the center. Another displacement. This moves the whole thing. So this is a much larger effect and it's moving the whole thing. Over here, we have the right swirl. I gave it a displacement, another displacement, just making sure things are moving around. We have this randomizer on this ellipse. So that way it looks like the center is moving constantly. So that way when it displaces it, it isn't going everywhere. And so all together we have this effect here. Pretty nice. Then I add some chromatic aberration to it and things start getting a little heavy here. The defocus is going to make this even worse. And the exponential glow, this is called X Glow. This is again, from the guys at Reactor. I talked about them in the first video, but effectively this is a community made plugin for DaVinci Resolve Fusion. There is a ton of community resources. They're very powerful tools. This one is one of my favorite effects, but it's very intensive on your GPU, called X Glow. And this exponentially glows your work. This has a lot of things to tinker with, but it looks really nice. Okay, and so this is very GPU intensive. I have a 5070 Ti, by the way, and this is chugging with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Cool. The first merge that I'm going to do is on linear dodge. That puts all of these magical effects here. And the second one I'm going to do is called hypotenuse. And on hypotenuse, it kind of isolates the brightest parts. And I don't know what the equivalent of this would be. It's not a glow dodge. It might be equivalent to glow dodge. I don't know. It's a very nice effect. So if I show you something else that would be equivalent, like a color dodge. So here's color dodge. Here's hypotenuse. I don't know. Very nice effect. Next, masked out this little ball here to put at the center of his hand. And again, this transform, which transform is just a tool that allows things to move around. This transform is tied to the tracker that I did on his hand. So all of this information right here throughout the animation is now being applied to this transform here. So this just moves and vibrates and glows a little bit. And then we have X Glow again. Again, very intensive process, very intensive little node here. Wonderful, looking good so far. I brought back that same effect from the painting 2D version, and now I get to actually animate it. Anyways, it's animating these areas right here with this tiny little effect right here. Here comes the first real big effect here. This is going to be pretty intense to render out. We'll see what happens. The first one are some sparks just flying from his hands, just dynamic sparks that are flying from his hands. Made this tiny little line here, so it looks like a lens distorted particle flying through the air, right? So we get these little pills flying through the air. And there's a whole bunch of effects and messing and toying with that happens here that takes quite a while. But yeah, it's effectively also connected to the center of his hand, and it's moving with the jitter of his hand, and it emits from that area. This same shape is then used for an emitter over here, which took a long time to figure out. It was kind of a headache. Trying to get particles to follow a swirling path took quite a while, but I finally got it to at least a place that I thought was reasonable. And so anyways, it's a very intense particle system here that's following the curvature of the composition to Machi's hand. And they kind of fly off a little bit, and I just thought, it looks cool, we'll keep it. Right, added defocus to those, merged them. Here's what we got for that. And these are on color dodge. So that way the effect is a little bit more subtle, but you can see them here. Then we have the lightning. I'm very happy with the lightning. It was a very clever solution in my opinion. I'm gonna show you what I did. So I brought in this effect here, right? It's just a painting, just a drawing, it's a 2D layer. Then I added a displace noise to it. Added another displace noise to it. Very intense looking, very cool. Then I added defocus. Defocus, again, just kind of blurs things out like a lens blur. Added a soft glow. And I was like, this is looking pretty cool. But what if I took a polygon and I made the polygon randomize and sort of warp around the screen to get that randomizing effect that lightning seems to have as it reveals. So this thing is effectively the mask for the lightning. So if I plug this back in, this is another thing I love about Fusion. I can just open two things at once, not a problem. So you can see here what's happening is that it's revealing this randomly. Pretty cool. Now if I add the soft glow, pretty cool. I think it looks pretty good. So when we have this all together, we have the lightning now on top of everything. Again, just logically building things in steps, step by step by step by step. Then if we bring in the particles from his hand, add a soft glow. The reason I'm using soft glow instead of X glow is because X glow is just so intense. For some of these, I just use soft glow, which is a node that's native to Fusion, and it's much easier on your GPU. So the next thing we have is something that took a while, but basically these are polygons for his arm. It took me a while. I had to do all this manually, that mask out areas where particles can leave from his tattoos. So he has tattoos on his arms. I wanted these to emanate particles just like they did in the painting. So it took me some manual cleanup, and then these also had to move according to the breathing, which I also did. Some of this stuff just took so long, but it was really fun to think about. I like this type of problem solving. There's like a fire effect that's being applied. It's just noise, displacement, and transforms all being applied. So like this, there you go. And it's happening on both arms, on both sides. And I have this dent here. The dent is effectively like a warp, and it pulls in the particles just a little bit. It just pulls in as they go up. They get pulled into that. So that's fun. And then over here on this side, we have these same masks being applied and transformed and dilated and blurred, merged down together to then feed into the mask for this emitter. So this emitter is emitting particles just from the area of his tattoos. Now, the emanation point isn't the same thing as where they're going to appear. They could appear all over the place, but they're coming from his tattoos. So this one's a little bit more intense. It's got to be done rendering, but I'll show you what it's emanating. It's that same pill-shaped polygon from before. I keep saying polygon, but that's because it's the name of the node that masks out the background elements, and so it's effectively just a path. That's all it is. It's just a path tool. Man, this thing is really intense. And they're so small too. What the flip? Why? Anyways, so here you go. Pill shape on the left, what it's spitting out on the right. It's very, very slight, but it's a very intense, it's a very intense particle system. Then I applied an X glow to it, so I really, really didn't like myself. And then adding a defocus to it, so it gets this really nice lens blur effect with that X glow on top. And so if we bring this all together, the fire of the arms happening here, on both sides of the arm happening here in this area, get merged down here, and then we bring in the particle system from the fire, from the tattoos, and it just adds a lot more life to this area of his body. Because again, I have to recreate the look of the painting as closely as possible while adding movement. It's not as simple as just copy pasting the PSD in here. I wish it was. And finally, there are rocks in the foreground, and I layered these on top of everything, so that way it breaks up the foreground a little bit. Oh, look at that. Lovely. Broke my GPU. Great. All right, that updated. Now that we're back and I can see my picture again, you can see where it's all coming together. All the particle systems working together, everything's flowing. Let's add in that nice lens flare from earlier. And again, this is tied to the movement and shaking of his hand, just like the ball from earlier, that solid X glow ball. That thing is tied to the lens flare. So everything, all the light, it all moves, it's dynamic, it's awesome. Added a slight vignette again, film grain, and my signature. I export it from Fusion as EXR files, and then I bring it back in using a loader node, which reads EXR files, composite files, and now it just plays back buttery smooth, well, relatively, compared to earlier, right? This is much easier on my computer, and now it reads it perfectly fine. So at the very least, I can see the motion, I can see how everything's working, and then I have to find the right music track, and that was just a matter of genre hunting, basically. But this is from the game Wildstar, which Magic Punk takes a lot of inspiration from, and so I thought it would be appropriate. I think it's good, and here's the final. Cool, guys, that's the end of it. Hope you enjoyed this journey through this process of how I did this all together. I mean, this was probably 200 hours worth of work. It was a big project, just fun on the side, but I learned a lot. I'm really happy with how it came out. I hope you enjoyed as well. If you want behind the scenes looks, go to Patreon, and I'm going to start putting all this stuff there. I'm going to include the DaVinci Resolve file, the Fusion file, the Moho file, everything that you've seen me do here, you can have access to as well. Once again, if you like my work, consider supporting me on Patreon, like and subscribe, and as always, go and make good art.